Hi Karan, this is Naveen from Cinema Express.
Hi, Naveen.
Hi. So the cinema division of the New Indian Express. You're known for your grand films, so the grandeur and the visuals. So how do you see the marriage of the grandeur and the horror genre?
I actually didn't approach my story, my part of the anthology, with any kind of a desire to kind of make a grand film or a spectacle of it. I had to follow a narrative. Within that, I have my own sense of aesthetic, which is crept into the narrative, but I didn't approach it like a big spectacle. I approached the story the way it should be told. Of course, the film, I hope people would think is well shot and well produced. But more than that, I think it's the inherent material, the narrative, the story, the intrigue within the narrative that I was chasing. For me, in any case, I was not in a comfortable space directing a ghost story. It's not my genre, my preferred genre at all. I've never done something or delved into this space. So for me, I was combating that challenge and trying to tell the story the best way possible. So the peripheries of scale and opulence didn't even enter my vision.
Now you mentioned several times that you're actually scared of horror films.
I'm very scared.
Yeah.
I don't watch any horror films. I've never watched any horror films besides the Ramsay brother films in the 80s. And maybe Get Out is what I saw, which can't be classified as horror. It's more
of
psychological.
yeah.
And I tried watching a Quiet Place, and I was mortified and petrified and put it off like halfway through. Not because it wasn't good, because it was too good. And it was so brilliant that I got so worried and scared. So for me, it's really something that I'm not comfortable doing. But I think it's nothing ventured, nothing gained. And I think then we all, and the weirdest part of it, that the idea to make this anthology was mine. The ghost stories idea was mine. And I'm like, I think I dug my own grave, pun intended. So I was like, why the hell have I got into this myself into this position? But I did. And then I took up the challenge and hopefully delivered to whatever extent.
Despite being a horror film, belong to the horror genre, it has the elements of your trademark elements, like it has a marriage, it has a family. So, was it intentional to?
No, I think they had to get married. Even in love stories, if you remember, they got married.
Yeah.
I like people getting married for some reason.
Okay.
People get married, and then what happens in the marriage is different. But I like them, I guess. So even love stories, they got married. Vicky and Kiara got married here. Mrunal and Avinash get married.
Yeah.
And when people get married, I like the wedding to look pretty. That I did. But the marriage is not the issues. Other things are. Yeah. So there is a marriage, but that's just part of the narrative.
You propelled the idea of ghost stories. So, if you had to make a third installment to this franchise, so what would it be?
Well, we had Lust. We've had Ghost. Now there is a plethora is wide open. We're delving with so many ideas, whether it should be crime stories or marriage stories or
Comedy,
maybe
Yeah, okay.
maybe something that is really all like stories of humor, or just maybe another love stories. Who knows? Or we don't know. We haven't really all finalized. All four of us have to sit along with Netflix and make that decision.
Your segment, particularly in the last stories, had a wacky idea, so which couldn't be implemented on the feature film per se. So, do you think as the platform like Netflix or any OTT platform being a great boon for experimenting with such ideas?
I think we look at Netflix or any digital platform like a platform of liberation, but that's not the way to approach it. I think that you can't just say, "Oh, I can't show sex in cinema. I can't show a certain tonality in cinema, and I can't push the boundaries and envelopes because it's more conservative where it comes to cinema. So I can do that on digital." I think the idea is that digital gives you the empowerment to tell stories that are unique in the world of stories. Sometimes what happens is that cinema is so dependent on its box office and that delivery sometimes stops certain decisions that you make. It's not about pushing the envelope or being explicit or being sexy or being, like just being out there. It's about telling stories that perhaps you wouldn't tell or be able to tell for celluloid that you can tell for the digital space. It's about exploding and expanding the bandwidth of stories.
Do you think being a part of this franchise or making films for this franchise has redefined your image as a filmmaker among the audience?
I don't know about that because I feel like I'm death by perception. I think people perceive me to be a certain kind of filmmaker, and no matter what I do, I'm never erased of that. I'm always labeled as a certain kind of filmmaker. Though I have done Bombay Talkies and Love Stories and now Ghost Stories, I fight very hard to fight that perception that I'm not just a fluffy, frivolous, good-looking imagery kind of filmmaker that makes films with songs and dances and love and good-looking people in good-looking places. I try to tell stories the way I know best. I can go batshit crazy trying to kind of change that perception, but that ain't happening in this lifetime, I think. So I can keep trying to push my own cinematic or creative envelope, but if it's not met with the required reception, then I have to just keep going at it till it does.
International Emmy Award nominations. So I see this as a huge step towards international recognition. So how do you see that? How do you see that recognition?
I see it amazing. We were nominated, it was a big deal. We all went. We celebrated our nomination in New York. Being nominated with the best of the world was a huge honor. It was an exhilarating experience. And it just felt like all the work you put in and all the craft that you kind of put into your work is validated. You know, when it's seen and noticed by people from a different culture in a different country, it's a tremendous validation. I felt very proud. More than any other nomination or any other award, the Emmys, the international Emmys, will always hold a very special place in my heart.
You've been distributing a lot of huge budget South Indian films like Bahubali, and was it a conscious decision to bridge the gap between the North Indian and South Indian films?
I feel very sad that we have a gap. Because I think everybody talks about crossover, but I've always said that the main crossover has to happen within the boundaries of our country. I think just making Indian films that are not language agnostic and that are not like just, you know, like, oh, this is the north part of the Bollywood is Hindi cinema, and then there's South Indian cinema, and then there's Bengali cinema, there's Maharashtrian cinema. It's actually that we should all be one cinema that we can be able to kind of flow with together. So I was a huge Rajamouli fan. I've seen all his films, loved him, celebrated his cinema in so many ways that I was so excited when the opportunity came my way to present Bahubali 1 and 2 and to kind of not bridge the gap, but just engulf the cinema into one zone altogether. And I've done that with 2.0, with Ghazi Attack. There are 3 films that I've been associated with in the South. I've also been part of a Marathi film bucket list. My endeavor is whenever I like a film and content, I like to kind of put my label on it, put my brand on it, and kind of do my best to make sure it gets viewed excessively within the parameters of the country.
Would you ever do a South Indian film or a multilingual?
In fact, our film Brahmastra, which we're making with the Fox Studios, Dharma, all of us, that our endeavor is to actually dub that in several languages and do that. If you ask me personally, directorially, I won't direct in another language because I won't understand the syntax of that language and I wouldn't serve that language well. But yes, our endeavors for many of our films is to kind of make sure that they reach a wider audience regionally, dub them, and collaborate with the forces from that industry who can help us achieve it in the best possible way.
Thank you, Karan. It was amazing talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.